Imagine lying in bed, surrounded by loved ones, and suddenly, you start seeing people who have long passed away. Your mother, who died 20 years ago, stands in the corner, smiling. Your childhood friend, who was taken too soon, sits at the edge of your bed. Is it just a trick of the mind, or is it something far greater? What really happens in the final hour before death? Do seniors see the afterlife? Do they relive their past? Or is it all just hallucinations? These questions have fascinated mankind since we first developed consciousness about our own mortality. In this video, we will uncover the final experiences of seniors before death, what they see, feel, and say. Whether you're curious, seeking comfort, or wondering about your own loved ones, stay till the end. The answers might surprise you, comfort you, or perhaps leave you with even more questions about what waits for us all. Before we dive into the visions and experiences, let's understand what physically happens to our bodies in the final hour of life. Death isn't instantaneous. It's a process, a gradual shutting down of systems that once worked in perfect harmony. As the body begins its final journey, circulation reduces. The heart, once beating steadily, begins to falter. Blood flow diminishes, particularly to the extremities, which is why the hands and feet of dying individuals often feel cold to the touch. Breathing slows, becoming irregular, sometimes with long pauses between breaths. Perhaps most fascinating is what happens in the brain. As oxygen levels decrease, consciousness begins to alter. The brain, desperate to make sense of confusing signals, may create dreamlike visions. But there's something else, something that science is still trying to understand. Many neurologists believe the brain releases a final surge of activity before death. Some studies suggest that DMT, a powerful psychedelic compound naturally found in trace amounts in our bodies, may flood the brain in these final moments. This could potentially explain the profound spiritual or visual experiences that dying people report. Dr. Kevin Nelson, a neurologist who has studied near-death experiences for decades, suggests that the dying brain is still a conscious brain. It's a brain that's struggling and under stress. And we know that certain parts of the brain have the ability to create visions, hallucinations, and perceptual experiences. But is that all there is to it? Many medical professionals who have spent years at the bedside of the dying aren't so sure. "My mother came to visit me last night," whispered Eleanor, an 82-year-old hospice patient. "She's been dead for 30 years, but there she was, standing at the foot of my bed in her favorite blue dress." Eleanor's experience isn't unique. In fact, it's remarkably common. Hospice workers and nurses who specialize in end-of-life care report that between 50% to 60% of dying patients experience what's known as deathbed visions. Most frequently, these visions involve deceased loved ones who seem to come to guide the dying person on their journey. Parents, spouses, siblings. These figures appear not as frightening specters, but as comforting presences. They often stand at the doorway or window, as if waiting. Some patients even report seeing beloved pets who have passed away. What's particularly intriguing about this phenomenon, often called the visitor effect, is its consistency across different cultures and religions. A Hindu man in India might see his departed father just as clearly as a Catholic woman in Ireland sees her late husband. This cross-cultural consistency raises fascinating questions. Are these visions merely hallucinations, born from similar neural processes? Or could they be glimpses into something beyond our understanding? Not all visions involve people. Some dying individuals describe peaceful landscapes, gardens, fields of flowers, or serene forests that seem to be waiting for them. Others see more abstract images, light, shadows, or figures they can't quite make out but somehow recognize. The debate between medical and metaphysical explanations for these phenomena has raged for centuries. From a strictly scientific perspective, these visions could be explained as hallucinations caused by oxygen deprivation, medication side effects, or the brain's attempt to make sense of the shutting down process. Dr. Christopher Kerr, who has documented over 1,400 end-of-life experiences, explains it this way. The brain is a meaning-making machine. Even as it's deteriorating, it's trying to make sense of what's happening. Yet, many hospice nurses, people who have witnessed hundreds of deaths, tell a different story. Mary, a hospice nurse with 25 years of experience, shared, "I've seen too many lucid moments where completely unresponsive patients suddenly become alert, have a meaningful conversation with someone who isn't there, and then pass away. It happens too consistently to dismiss." These nurses report patients talking to invisible figures, reaching out to unseen entities, and describing beings that others in the room cannot perceive. Often, these conversations seem one-sided to observers, but to the dying person, they're having a real dialogue. Religious perspectives offer their own interpretations. Christianity speaks of angels coming to guide the soul to heaven. Islamic traditions mention the angels Munkar and Nakir. Many Buddhist texts describe transition states, where the consciousness prepares for its next journey. Is it possible that both perspectives have merit? That what begins as neurological activity transforms into something transcendent? If anyone has insight into the final moments of life, it's hospice workers. These dedicated professionals have witnessed countless transitions from life to death, and their observations reveal fascinating patterns. In almost 30 years of hospice work, I've noticed 3 common occurrences, says Robert, a hospice director. First, dying individuals often talk to people who aren't physically present in the room. Second, many express surprise or joy just before passing. And third, a significant number describe seeing or moving toward a light or transition phase. These patterns are remarkably consistent. A typical scenario might unfold like this. A patient who has been unresponsive for days suddenly becomes alert. They might look toward a specific corner of the room and smile. Then, they might say something like, "I'm coming, wait for me," or "I see you now." One particularly moving account comes from Janet, a night nurse at a hospice center in Oregon. "I was caring for a man who had been unconscious for nearly 3 days. His family had been keeping vigil but had stepped out for coffee. Suddenly, he opened his eyes, looked directly above him, smiled the most peaceful smile I've ever seen, and whispered, 'She's here.' Then he took his last breath. When his wife returned, she immediately asked if anything had happened. When I told her his last words, she broke down crying and told me their daughter had passed away from cancer the year before. These accounts are too numerous and too similar to dismiss easily. Not all final journeys are the same. While many seniors experience what seems to be immense peace in their final hours, others show restlessness or distress. What determines whether one's departure is serene or troubled? Many hospice workers believe that unresolved conflicts or regrets can manifest as agitation near death. A person who has lived with guilt or unfinished emotional business might fight against the transition. Conversely, those who have made peace with their lives often seem to embrace death with tranquility. Religious beliefs and cultural conditioning also appear to play a role. Someone who has feared divine judgment their entire life might approach death with anxiety, while a person who believes they're going to be reunited with loved ones might face it with anticipation. Final words often reflect these emotional states. Some seniors whisper words of comfort, "It's so beautiful," or "Don't worry about me." Others express confusion, "What's happening?" or "I don't understand." Dr. Martha Twaddle, a palliative care physician, notes, "How we die often reflects how we lived. Those who approached life with acceptance tend to approach death the same way. Those who struggled with surrender in life often struggle at the end." One of the most fascinating aspects of the dying experience is the apparent distortion of time and place. Many dying individuals report feeling as if they exist in 2 realms simultaneously: the physical world around them and somewhere else, somewhere beyond. "My grandmother kept looking back and forth between us and the ceiling," recounted Michael. whose 94-year-old grandmother passed away in 2019. She would talk to us, then turn and talk to someone else we couldn't see. She wasn't confused. She was fully aware that she was speaking to different people in different places. This in-between state often includes sensations of floating or detachment from the physical body. Time itself seems to behave differently. Some describe moments stretching into eternity, while others experience their entire lives flashing before their eyes in an instant. Perhaps most intriguing is the reported ability to see both deceased loved ones and present family members at the same time. "I can see your father standing behind you," a dying mother might tell her daughter. Or, "Your grandfather is here with us now," a father might say to his son. These experiences suggest a gradual transition rather than an abrupt switch from life to death. A slow crossing of a threshold where, for a brief time, one foot remains in each world. The final utterances of the dying have been recorded throughout history, from famous last words to the private whispers of ordinary people saying goodbye. When we examine these statements collectively, patterns emerge that are difficult to ignore. Many seniors say phrases like, "They're here. I see the light. I have to go now. They're waiting for me." Dr. Lisa Smart, a linguist who founded the Final Words Project, has analyzed hundreds of end-of-life utterances. Her research reveals that metaphors of journey and transition dominate these final communications. Dying people speak of going home, crossing over, or leaving now. Even more compelling is how the language often shifts from the personal to the collective. A dying person might start saying "we" instead of "I," as if they're already joining a group that others can't see. "We're ready now," or "we need to leave soon," are common examples. Does this suggest they're seeing something beyond our world? Are they already joining with those who have gone before them? Perhaps the most widely reported death-related vision is that of a tunnel leading to a bright, often warm, and inviting light. This image has become so embedded in our cultural understanding of death that it appears in everything from movies to children's cartoons. But its persistence across time and culture suggests there might be something more to it than mere cultural conditioning. Those who have come close to death and been revived, experiencing what we call near-death experiences or NDEs, often describe this tunnel in remarkable detail. They report floating or moving rapidly through darkness toward an intensely bright light that, paradoxically, doesn't hurt to look at. Some describe a pulling force, a gentle but irresistible tug drawing them forward. Others mention a sense of profound peace and acceptance as they move toward the light. Neuroscientists suggest this could be explained by the way visual processing shuts down during oxygen deprivation. As the brain loses oxygen, peripheral vision goes first, creating a tunnel-like effect, while the central visual field, perceived as a bright light, remains. Yet those who have experienced it insist it's more than neural misfiring. The emotional and spiritual impact of these experiences often changes them forever, suggesting that whatever happens in those moments, whether neurochemical or metaphysical, touches something deep within the human experience. Across the world's religions and cultures, the moment of death is described with striking similarities, despite vastly different belief systems. Christianity speaks of angels coming to escort the soul, with many Catholics specifically mentioning seeing the Virgin Mary or specific saints. In Muslim traditions, the angel of death, Azrael, comes to take the soul, though his appearance differs based on whether the person lived a righteous life. Buddhist and Hindu traditions describe a transition phase, what Tibetan Buddhists call the bardo, where the consciousness prepares for its next incarnation. Indigenous beliefs often involve crossing natural boundaries, like rivers or mountains, to reach the land of ancestors. What's remarkable is that despite these different frameworks, the actual reported experiences show common elements. Guides who come to help, a journey that must be undertaken, a transition from one state to another. Even more intriguing, dying individuals often report visions that align with their cultural expectations. Christians see angels, Hindus see deceased family members, but the emotional content and structure of these experiences remain consistent across cultures. This raises profound questions. Are we all programmed to experience death in similar ways, regardless of our beliefs? Or is there a universal reality that we all encounter, but interpret through our cultural lenses? As death approaches its culmination, the body goes through final physiological changes. Breathing, which may have been irregular for hours, slows further, with pauses between breaths growing longer. The death rattle, a sound caused by air passing through vocal cords, relaxed by approaching death, may become audible. But beyond these physical signs, something else often occurs, something that has been noted by countless families and healthcare workers. Many dying individuals experience what's called terminal lucidity, a sudden, brief period of clarity and awareness that comes after days or even weeks of unresponsiveness. A grandmother with advanced dementia might suddenly recognize her family members. A father who hasn't spoken in days might suddenly offer words of love or wisdom. These moments of clarity, coming so close to the end, are both comforting and mysterious. Physical changes occur as well. Many report seeing a look of peace settle over the person's face. Some witness slight movements of the hands, as if the dying person is reaching for something, or someone invisible to others. The final breath, that moment when life definitively ends, is often preceded by subtle but noticeable changes. Many healthcare workers describe seeing a slight smile or expression of recognition cross the face of the dying person, as if they've just realized something wonderful or seen someone beloved. After death occurs, many family members report sensing a presence in the room, a feeling that their loved one is still there, just differently. Some describe feeling a gentle touch, a brushing of air, or even smelling a scent associated with the deceased person. Are these simply the brain's way of processing grief? Or could they be signs of the soul transitioning? The line between psychological comfort and spiritual reality blurs in these sacred moments. Dr. Peter Fenwick, a neuropsychiatrist who has studied end-of-life experiences extensively, notes, "What we observe at the bedside doesn't easily fit into our scientific frameworks. There seems to be something more happening, something that suggests consciousness might not end when the brain stops functioning. Is death the end, or the beginning of something greater?" The experiences of those on the threshold suggest that perhaps the line between life and death is not as clear-cut as we once believed. Maybe, in those final hours, we get a glimpse of what comes next. The consistency of these reports, across cultures, religions, and throughout recorded history, gives us pause. Are these merely the final flickerings of a dying brain, or evidence of something that continues beyond our physical existence? Perhaps both perspectives hold truth. Perhaps what begins as neurological activity becomes the gateway to something transcendent, something that science alone cannot yet fully explain. What do you think? Have you witnessed a loved one's final moments? Did they see something or someone that you couldn't see? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might bring comfort to others facing the same journey. In the end, whether these visions are hallucinations or glimpses of an afterlife, they serve an important purpose. They bring comfort to the dying and to those left behind. They remind us that even in our final moments, we are not alone. And perhaps, just perhaps, they offer us a preview of the greatest journey we will ever take. If you found this video thought-provoking, please consider liking and sharing it with others who might find comfort in these insights. And for more explorations of life's great mysteries, check out our related video on near-death experiences, linked in the description below. Until next time, remember that understanding death helps us appreciate life all the more deeply.